Have you ever wondered why that supplement that changed your neighbor's life doesn't do the same for you, yet it makes you feel terrible? Or why are there people who, with just 4 hours of sleep, seem to be running at full power, while you, even if you sleep 10 hours, feel like your battery never charges? So far in this series about rebuilding the cathedral, that is, your own body, I've talked to you about the foundations, about water, electrolytes, and the cellular voltage of minus 90 millivolts. But today, I'm here to tell you a truth that will save you. Years of frustration. Not all grand cathedrals are illuminated in the same manner. Treating every single human body with the exact same medical protocol is very much like trying to charge a tiny wristwatch with a high-powered car charger, specifically a powerful Tesla charger. Either the energy doesn't reach it, or you simply fry it. Today, I'm going to reveal to you, what is your original electrical design? And when you understand this, you'll stop copying other people's protocols. Because ultimately, copying someone else's protocol is like putting gasoline in a diesel car. At first it starts up, but in no time at all, you're left without an engine. To do this, I'm going to carefully draw upon the ancient and profound wisdom from 5,000 years ago, the traditional system of Ayurvedic medicine. But I'm not going to do it simply to engage in a discussion regarding spiritual mysticism, but rather to comprehensively understand the underlying biophysics of your unique physical constitution. Stay with me, because today you're finally going to understand why your body behaves the way it does. And what is the specific instruction manual that the system has kept hidden from you until now? Before we proceed any further into this discussion, I want to pause for a brief moment and speak directly to my brothers in India and to all those who have been raised and nurtured beneath the eternal radiance of the Vedas. There is no need for anything more. My deepest respect. The intricate field that we currently identify as biophysics, and the phenomena we are now able to precisely measure with modern voltmeters and electron microscopes, your ancient and incredibly wise men, they referred to these vital energies as prana and doshas thousands of years ago. But I'm not here today to correct Ayurveda. What I'm here to do is show the world that your ancestors described patterns of the body with a level of practical precision. So much so that today we can reinterpret them in modern language. They weren't simply engaging in a deep discussion regarding magic. Rather, they were talking about the fundamental universal laws of our reality, and when they meticulously articulated the intricate details of the balance of the 5 elements, what they were fundamentally accomplishing was describing exactly how matter systematically structures and orchestrates electricity. Today, when we talk about millivolts and the sodium-potassium pump, what we're really doing is simply giving a modern name to a truth that is thousands of years old, because truth has no expiration date. And here, one important thing, the key concept is not the name. The concept is the biophysics of constitution, of your constitution. This is the central concept I use in the video to validate the ancestral knowledge of Ayurveda with modern science. And let me clarify each one of the concepts. Constitution. Here I am referring to the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, but I do so in modern terms, referring to what we call biotypes, which is the original electrical design of each body. Biophysics is the interdisciplinary study of complex biological phenomena, such as human health and various diseases, by utilizing the fundamental principles of physics, including electricity, frequency, voltage, and electrical impedance, to understand life at every level. I'll explain it so you can understand me better. There are people who lose energy easily, meaning they become scattered. Then there are others who turn into pure heat and inflammation. In other words, they overheat. And others who store energy but don't mobilize it. They become stagnant. This is what Ayurveda labeled in a practical way. Basically, what this means is that the ancient concepts of the doshas are not mysticism, but rather an age-old way of how matter organizes electricity. When we talk about cellular voltage, minus 90 millivolts, or about the sodium-potassium pump, or impedance, what I'm really doing is giving a modern scientific name to the eternal truth of human constitution. As I was saying, the concept? The biophysics of constitution. And I'm explaining it to you as an electrical metaphor so that it can be understood. Please understand that this is not a formal clinical medical diagnosis, nor is it something you can conveniently measure by yourself at home with a specialized chemical polymer kit. It is merely intended as a helpful way for you to better understand these complex patterns. I know that for you, it's more than likely that the word Ayurveda sounds a bit distant. Forget about the name. Just focus on the concept of biotypes. Biotypes, in this context, are a biophysical translation of the doshas from Ayurvedic medicine and are used to describe the original electrical design of each body, or as we're calling it in this series, of each cathedral. The fundamental key point here is that nature, in its truly infinite and vast intelligence, simply does not ever create completely identical or repetitive molds. What it does is group energy into three forms of management that Ayurveda uses. They call them dosas, and that we are going to translate today into electrical engineering. The first is the dispersion model, beta. It is a high-frequency and small battery system, which translates into a system with basically very low impedance, meaning that energy enters and exits too easily. And if this is your model, you don't retain anything. Just so you understand, impedance is the opposition that a system presents to the flow of energy or current. And low impedance means that the opposition is minimal, which allows energy to flow very easily. In systems like this, as I was saying, with high frequency and a small battery, the problem is that the electrical network has leaks and the charge is lost very quickly. The energy flows so easily that the body isn't able to retain it, and the consequence is that the cellular voltage suddenly tends to drop sharply. These are people, creative, quick, but whose electrical network has a lot of leaks. They're usually thin people. Dry skin. And if you're like this, your problem isn't a lack of energy. Your problem is a lack of insulation and grounding, which are, in the end, the necessary mechanisms to prevent that energy from dispersing due to your low impedance. These are people who need oils and salts, earth and water to thicken their terrain so that the voltage doesn't disperse. If you see yourself here, stay tuned, because in 5 minutes, I'm going to give you your protocol. Second, the Pitta combustion model, also known as the fire voltage. Pitta means fire and water. These are people who have a faster metabolism and a superactive sodium-potassium pump. A metabolism that pushes hard with a tendency to overheat, and this translates into an extremely high flow of electrons. It is the highest performing system and, above all, the quintessential system for overheating. The high flow of electrons generates so much heat that its own battery, in the end, what happens is that it oxidizes. If the excess heat is not properly managed, it generates free radicals, that is, positive charges that acidify the matrix and burn the cell membranes. The oxidation of the battery leads the body to live on the edge of an inflammatory short circuit. These are determined people with strong digestion, and their engine runs at too many revolutions. If they spend too much time in the sun or consume spicy salts, they catch fire even more. So if you are like this, the approach to repairing your cathedral, that is, your body, and seeking to reduce friction or heat would be to focus primarily on controlling the tendency toward acidity, inflammation, or overheating in your body, and to make sure you provide it with coolness as a general strategy in order to avoid an inflammatory short circuit. As for water, if possible, drink easy water, which should be especially destroys this zone, and cold helps to calm it. Fruit, in this sense, is an excellent source of hydration, micronutrients, and water content. Melon, watermelon, cucumber, citrus fruits, or berries. Ultimately, the goal is to lower your internal temperature and seek real coolness. Hydration and avoiding excessive heat. And here, when I talk to you about structured water, the goal is to promote order and physiological calm in your body, not to try to reach some miracle temperature. And as for a technical approach, red light or near infrared, the sun provides the best of these. It is recommended, but in short and controlled doses. What is the goal? It's very simple: to seek light coherence and prevent your mitochondria from becoming overloaded. And regarding electrical nutrition, avoid voltage spikes. In other words, avoid sugars and stimulants, because they can cause internal short circuits. If you see yourself here, stay tuned, because in just a few minutes, I'm going to give you your protocol. Third, the storage model, or Kapha. It is the system with high capacity and slow charging. It represents earth and water, and these are the ones with the greatest storage capacity. They are like true large electrical capacitors with a huge amount of energy, potential, but little kinetic energy. Their energy moves very slowly, and they are a solid structure. Think, for example, of a massive cathedral. The main risk they face is stagnation. If they aren't activated, their internal water becomes stagnant, and their voltage becomes heavy and inert. Stagnation reduces the system's dynamism, and without dynamism, there's less spark, and the exclusion zone, the water, etc., loses its hexagonal structure. In short, they need movement so that their immense battery does not become inert. If you are this type, what you need to do is look for ways to activate yourself and do it in a fluid manner. What does this mean, specifically? You need movement that generates what is called piezoelectricity. When you move your bones and muscles, it is generated. Small electric charges, which are actually activating the stagnant EZ water. And as for water, you actually need a smaller amount, but you should consume structured water and get direct sunlight. In your case, you are one of the best suited to force the galvanic flow I mentioned in the previous video. It's important that you activate your sodium-potassium pump because it tends to be lazy. If you see yourself here, stay tuned, because in a moment I'm going to give you your protocol. And here's a question. Why is it vital for you to know all this? It's very simple. If you're a combustion model and you get more sun than you should or eat spicy foods, you're going to burn out. If you're a dispersion model and you only drink cold water without minerals, your battery will be drained forever. And if you're a storage model and you don't get active, your immense battery will become inert as well. The sodium-potassium pump is the main generator of the minus 90 millivolt voltage. I told you about it in a previous video. It's the foundation of communication in the nervous system. As I was saying, watch the video right before this one. And on the other hand, every dosa is a neuronal dosa. And now I'm going to show you that what I'm talking about isn't a body type. It's a type of nervous system. And I'll analyze each one of them with you from a neuroscience perspective. Vata, the one of dispersion, is the low impedance model, which correlates with the nervous system that seems to always be in an on connected mode. They continuously have a high frequency of neuronal firing, and the biological effect of all this is the exhaustion of the pump, sodium-potassium due to overactivation. You can interpret this as anxiety, insomnia, as a sympathetic dominant system instead of a parasympathetic one. And the energy leakage translates into a loss of neuronal coherence. Using an easy-to-understand example, we don't want an untuned radio. Neuronal coherence means that all the neurons in a certain area of the brain, whether during a thought or while performing a task, specifically vibrate together at the same frequency. In this way, they send a message. Of course, in the case of beta, the system is so accelerated that the neurons lose their ability to synchronize. It's as if the radio dial were constantly moving. The message gets lost in the noise, which leads to anxiety, insomnia, and feelings of lack of focus or mental noise. Let's move on to the neuroscience of Pitta, the one related to combustion. In this case, the excess heat and oxidation are correlated with neuroinflammation. This is essentially like a loud and urgent emergency fire alarm, suddenly and violently erupting within the complex neural pathways of the human brain, which is also scientifically referred to by researchers as the presence of activated microglia. The firefighters go on high alert, but they don't put out the fire. The excess heat and oxidation are the flame or the danger signal, and the microglia are activated to fight that signal, which is nothing more than the signal of neuroinflammation. And what happens then? Well, the excess activity causes even more damage. The biological effect is a neuronal short circuit. The excess of excitatory neurotransmitters, that is glutamate, leads to irritability, migraines, or what is called mental fire. And just to help you remember, glutamate is a neurotransmitter. Thank you. It is the main excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. Its function is to act as the brain's accelerator. In fact, it is essential for functions such as learning or memory, for example. But in this Pitta biotype, or in this combustion model, excess glutamate is linked to neuronal short-circuiting. It's an imbalance. This essentially signifies that the accelerator is continuously and forcefully pressed all the way down, ultimately leading to a state of excessive neuronal overexcitation within the brain. And as I was saying, you see the consequences in irritability, migraines, or mental fire. They need the coolness provided by alkalinity to calm all that neuronal activity. And this explains how two people can, thank you, eat the same way. And yet one lives in peace while the other lives in an almost constant state of fire. Now let's move on to the neuroscience of Kapha, the storage model. In this model, stagnation is correlated with slow information flow and reduced neuroplasticity. The biological effect is cognitive slowness and difficulty in awakening attention. Movement, or piezoelectricity, is the impulse that activates circulation, that is, cerebral metabolism and the pump, the sodium-potassium pump, to speed up synapses. Remember, the synapse is the point where one neuron passes an electrical signal, and a chemical one to the next. You might visualize this process as though it were the fundamental switch, or the critical connection point between two distinct neural pathways or wires. This represents the precise and vital moment in time when information is carefully processed, or a complex decision is finally made. In the Kapha Biotype, stagnation causes this transfer of information to be slow and sluggish. The synapse begins to slow down significantly, which consequently leads to a state of cognitive sluggishness and a profound difficulty in awakening one's attention. Piezoelectricity, that is, the movement that generates electric charges, which I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, is necessary to force the sodium-potassium pump and get it working. I channel it, and it ends up reactivating brain communication. Well then, now we know who you are, and I'm going to explain how you can fix yourself. Because personal sovereignty is not just knowing that you have a problem, it's knowing how to execute the technical solution for that problem. And here's something important. When I say technical solution, I'm not telling you to turn yourself into a laboratory. No, what I'm giving you, or what I'm going to do, is just give you some guidelines. And then the practical aspects. It's better if you adjust those with common sense. And of course, if you have any medical conditions, do it with your doctor's help. The first protocol, Vata, shielding and stability. If you're Vata, your electrical network is noisy. You lose electrons through the air and your nervous system. It's as if you're always in on mode, wearing out your sodium-potassium pump. In terms of technical action, what you need is earthing, that is grounding, and you need it more than anyone else, because it's your mandatory connection to the earth. To discharge all that excess static energy you have inside your body. As for water, drink water with a higher mineral concentration, hypertonic water at specific times, so that you can increase the density of your internal environment. There's a lot of electricity in your system. Metals, the use of. Copper and zinc anodes, which I showed you, often help to anchor your voltage. Second protocol, Pitta, cooling and coherence. If you're Pitta, your engine runs at too many revolutions. You generate a lot of free radicals, which are positive charges, and what they do is acidify the matrix. Basically, your cathedral is burning up inside at every moment. And here, as a technical action, your best friend is near-infrared and red light. Remember, the sun is the best of all, but only in short and controlled doses. You need light coherence so your mitochondria don't get overloaded. Especially cold and structured. Heat destroys the exclusion zone, and cold expands it. And as for electrical nutrition, avoid voltage spikes. In other words, avoid sugars and stimulants, because they'll probably cause you short circuits. And now the third protocol, Kapha, activation and flow. If you're Kapha, you have a huge battery, but it's probably sulfated. The water in your body moves very little, and stagnant water doesn't generate electricity. So what's the technical legend? Well, you need movement that generates what I mentioned before, piezoelectricity. By moving your bones and muscles, you're generating small electrical charges that activate the water. That's zeta, which might be stagnant. As for water, you need less quantity but of extremely high quality. You need highly structured water and direct sunlight. And as for metals, for you, what benefits you is the use of metals to force the galvanic flow and awaken the pump. Sodium-potassium, which I already told you, tends to be lazy. And here comes the final revelation. Do you remember what I previously told you about wave genetics? 2 videos ago. Specifically about the theory that biological information can also be understood as frequency and coherence. Well, in this context, the important thing is to keep what is useful. Your body functions with significantly greater efficiency when there is internal order, natural rhythm, and harmonious coherence. Furthermore, every individual dosha vibrates at a distinctly different frequency. Vata is a high and fast frequency. Pitta is a medium and intense frequency. And Kapha is a low and deep frequency. Your personal sovereignty is not achieved just by tuning your antenna, your DNA, to your original frequency, and not the one imposed by the system. It's understanding that your electrical design is your neural design, and when you try to be someone you are not, electrically speaking, you simply get sick. Rebuilding your cathedral is not an aesthetic process. It is about giving your inner architect the exact materials required for its design. And by giving your biotype the correct voltage, that is, water, minerals, and movement, you not only illuminate the cathedral, but also, and especially, you tune in. The dial of your brain. Rebuilding your cathedral means giving your inner architect the exact materials that its design requires, as I was saying. It is only at the precise moment when the voltage is perfectly calibrated and correct for your specific biotype that the light of your inner cathedral and your mental clarity will begin to radiate and shine with brilliant intensity once again. For centuries, we've been sold the idea that the exact same identical diet, the exact same identical protocol, the exact same identical routine, the exact same identical solution is expected to apply universally to vastly different and unique human bodies. But biology doesn't work that way. Electricity doesn't work that way either. And neither does your nervous system. Your body. It's not broken, it's just misunderstood. Each biotype has a different way of sustaining voltage, as I just mentioned. It's not better or worse, it's just different. Vata doesn't need more stimulation. What it needs is containment. Pitta doesn't need more drive. What it needs is to cool down. And Kapha doesn't need more accumulation. What it needs is activation. The mistake hasn't been your discipline. The mistake has been trying to live at a frequency that isn't yours. When you force your body to operate outside of its original electrical design, you're not making progress. What you're actually doing is wearing yourself out, becoming inflamed and burning out. True sovereignty doesn't mean copying someone else's protocols. It means respecting your own internal architecture, which, of course, you first have to get to know. And the reconstruction of the cathedral, as I was saying, isn't about aesthetics. It's about a structural reconstruction. It's about restoring your body to the voltage that it can sustain, the rhythm it can integrate, and the coherence that allows you to think clearly, feel calmly, and act with real energy. When the voltage is perfectly calibrated for your specific biotype, your internal energy no longer dissipates or leaks away. The constant mental noise finally begins to settle down, and the brain reestablishes its focus and tunes back in. The internal fires disappear. There are no more constant leaks, and there are no more huge dormant batteries sulfating away. There is only well-managed electricity, respected design, and life working as it should. In the next chapter, I will take the next technical step in this reconstruction. I'll be waiting for you there. See you soon. In the next step of this reconstruction. We've reached the point where I always tell you, always forward, and I'll read your comments.